Hey guys, did you miss me? Hey guys, welcome back to my video channel on writing with S.H. Clark. Sorry it's been so long since I've been able to make a video. It's been really busy and hectic in my side of the world, but we're back today on a new subject, writing. I'm really excited about it. So before we go into the subject I wanted to talk to you guys about today, I'm going to talk about two books that I've read in the last couple of weeks that I highly recommend for anyone that's looking for a new book to read. The first book is Between the Lines by Jodi Picoult and her daughter Samantha Van Leer. It's really great. I bought it about a year ago and I hadn't been able to read it because I've been so busy, but I finally was able to sit down and make my 2017 goal for reading, and it's to read hopefully a book a month and tell you guys about it. So Between the Lines is the first book in its series, and it's about a girl who doesn't fit in, who keeps reading a fairy tale book, and she's falling for the main character in the fairy tale book, Oliver. And Oliver wants to get out of the fairy tale book, and he meets Delia, who's the first person in centuries who's actually been able to hear him. Well, he claims it's centuries, but it's probably only like 50 years. I can't remember how long it's been since the book was written. But Delia is the first person to ever hear him, and so their goal is to get him out of the book. And it's really cute. I really recommend it. The other book I want to recommend is called The Inside of Out by Jean Marie Thorne. And this is a book about a girl who wants to be a hero, but is really bad at it. So in this book, the main character's name is Daisy, and her best friend Hannah finally comes out of the closet, so to speak, and starts dating Daisy's old best friend, who's kind of now her enemy. And Daisy takes it upon herself to convince the school board that the homecoming dance needs to be all-inclusive for same-sex couples and straight couples and all of the above. Nothing is based on gender. It should be equal. And as a person who is actively a promoter of the LGBTQ community and their rights, I fell in love with the idea and concept of this book really quickly. This is another book I've had on my shelf for a year, and I decided to read it last month, and it's fantastic. It's really funny. It's one of those books where you root for the main character, but then you kind of look at the main character and go like, you're making really bad decisions. So if you're looking for something a little different than your average YA romance, because there is some romantic elements in here between her and him, you can see them, these two, then you should read it, and I really recommend it. I would give this book 4 stars, and from what I'm reading in this book so far, it is 5 stars. So read these, they're really good. So I have joined the Crate Facebook page on Facebook, and best idea I've ever done. It's the Crazed Society, and it's filled with a bunch of people like me who love young adult novels and love Crate. If you follow me on Instagram, you do know that unfortunately I had to cancel my Crate subscription because I am going into a very hectic second semester at USD, and so I'm not working as much, so I couldn't afford it. But my really great friend Megan, love you, bought me 3 more months of the Crate subscription, so I should be getting 3 more boxes. And if you noticed, I didn't do some unboxing videos for the last 3 books. So here are the pictures from the last 3 months. So on the Crate page, I did ask the community if anybody had any recommendations on what they would like me to talk about. And Tara from the community asked me to talk about world building. There's a couple people in the community that are looking to start writing their own stories, which is great. I'm really excited and I'm glad to be part of it and offer any advice or knowledge that I've had over my experience of being a writer. And so she asked me to talk about world building, so that's what we're going to talk about. So we're going to kind of do this in steps, and I'm going to break each step down for you guys. The house phone is ringing. Yes, as you can tell, I'm home. Anyway, so we're going to go through steps, and I'm going to give you the way that I come up with my world building. There's multiple different ways to do this, but we're going to do it the S.H. Clarke way. Step number 1. So you're going to need a name for your world. Now, you could come up with this immediately, like we're going to talk about right now, or you can come up with this later. And for the most part, I typically come up with it in the beginning, and then it changes a whole bunch of times depending on what I do. Are a bunch of different websites where you can actually generate names. If you're doing fantasy world, which I know that Tara was more interested in about, you could do a fantasy name generator. Now, one of the really good ways to generate names, it's really hard to find a fantasy land name generator, but there are websites like Donjon, which is the fantasy world generator, or Rinkworks. And with that one, you can kind of like pick a theme, like Dragon Rider, and it'll pop up with all kinds of different names that you could use. So for example, I went on Rinkworks.com and looked up Dragon Rider names, and I got names like Laruk, Tia, Lore, Mong, Suruz. And then you can use those as your fantasy land names. There's also a really cool way to come up with what your world looks like. So on donjon.bin.sh /fantasy/world, you can do what's called a fantasy world generator. And you can put your name that you choose in there, and you can fill in information like geography and rivers, and if there's castles, and it'll actually make you like a little world to look at. So here's an example. See, from my example here, I chose to make the world called Demontis. I just kind of mixed demon and Atlantis together and came up with Demontis. And made it so that there was 60% water and 1% ice on this world. And as you can see from the picture, this is what it would typically look like. So that's what I would recommend starting with. And I also recommend printing out your world or writing down your names and putting it in what will be part 2. Get a journal. So I have a million journals, and this was one of the ones that my aunt got me recently because I'm obsessed with Nightmare Before Christmas. And look, it came with stickers. But you'll want a journal to keep all your notes and your world and stuff like that in it. Or you can be like George R.R. Martin and have file cabinets. That works too. Just make sure you separate each thing that you have. So you'll want like different folders for your world and clothing, families, pets, animals, creatures, bad guys, food, drinks. I could keep going, but you would need a lot of that. But if you want to be like me and just put them in journals, it works too. It's the same thing, same concept, just you'll need to mark a lot of different pages for different things so you know where everything is. Or you could have a journal for each different thing. So like this journal could be your world journal, and then you can have a journal for characters, and it just depends on if you want to type it or write it. Or number 3. So after you make your land and kind of have a name, then you got to start making the basic stuff. And one of the most basic things is language. People need to communicate, right? So you need a language. So you could be like Tolkien and have Elven. Your world could be a fantasy world in Japan, so they probably need to learn Japanese. That doesn't necessarily mean that your characters speak in that language, but you will need to at some point hear it. So for example, in the book I am currently writing, I have a Native American girl named Willow, and she is one of the last of the Patwin tribe, which is one of the tribes that probably doesn't exist anymore, and if they do, that's great. I'd love to pick anyone's brain who knows anything about Patwin, but she speaks the language of the Patwin tribe with another character named Ahote, and so I don't know the language. I don't know how to spell the language, and my readers probably wouldn't understand language anyway. So I reference it that my other main character hears them speaking, but she doesn't understand them. So you definitely need a language, and with language you need religion. That's another big thing. If there's any type of deities that they follow or gods, do the gods exist? Another great example for religion, well, you could take Percy Jackson for example. So the gods exist, so obviously at some point they were worshipped too, so they used the Greek Orthodox culture. So you can make it where there's no religion, but with the lack of religion, what are the consequences? Are there consequences? So that's something you want to think about and write down in your book when you're deciding religion. And what's great about creating a religion is, in a fantasy world, is you can pull from other religions. And with religion probably comes the folklore of the story. So you need to come up with backstory. So we know what we're talking about when we're talking folklore. So for our culture, it's vampires, werewolves, stories that you're told as a child that make you do certain things. Number 4. I would say number 4 is the most tedious, because world building is tedious. This is the part where you come up with maps, flags, currency, buildings and what they're made materials wise, if there's any type of rulers, military, customs is a big one. Is there a dominant culture is another big one. Does the world have technology? Are they lacking technology? Are they advanced technology? Districts, and when I talk about districts, I'm talking about like something like the Hunger Games, or like in the Divergent series, how they have the different districts depending on your skill set. Animals is a big one. Do you have normal animals that we deal with every day, or do you have creatures? Are there dragons like in the Game of Thrones, you know? Are there weird things? 5. Laws. You need laws. Lots of laws. So Flawed, which was in one of the old Owl Crate book boxes, is a good example of laws. So you can't do anything that is seen as bad or unworthy in your culture. So Cecilia had to come up with laws that would get someone branded with this giant F. Hunger Games is another good one with laws. So anyone under the age of 18 is required to go to the reaping. You don't have a choice. You have to go. And if your name gets picked, you go to the, you have to go. I can't think of any other books with laws. Write them down, type them out. You're going to need to remember them, because when you're writing your book and you're writing what your character's doing, you have to remember if what they are doing is breaking the law or not of your world. And we're down to number 6, and that's the history. So this is so intense. It is probably the most intense of the entire process. You need to give a reason and a birth to your world. You need to come up with how the world was created, what started, how it grew, basically the evolution of your world. Because you can't just go into your story and say this world is created if you don't have its history. Now, you can kind of get away with it in some cases, like if you say no one's left alive that remembers the history, or all the history texts have been destroyed, but there's probably someone that knows its history. So you can kind of get away with it, but you kind of can't. Okay, number 7. This isn't really world building, but it's a recommendation, I would say, for your world. Just make sure whatever era that your story is in, whatever type of world that it's in, make sure when you start creating maybe names of the cities or character names or just random names that the characters are going to come across, that it, one, reflects the setting. The setting is called Maladrock, and it's a dragon and sea creature filled colony, and probably not from this era. It's probably like, say, year 5621. Your character's probably not going to be named Susie. Okay, that's all I've got for world building. I hope that was helpful. I will have another video coming very soon. Another person named Brandy asked you should do one on character tropes, and I haven't really talked about characters on these videos, so we will get to characters. And with that, we'll also do a video on writing your characters for your audience, because I think that's really important to know your audience, because if you don't know your audience, then when you go to picture book, you don't know where to go and put it, or send it to whoever. And then that could be bad, because then you'll just get a bunch of rejection letters saying this does not fit what we need. Alright guys, thanks so much. I'm gonna go shopping and eat. Bye!